carburetor on my Farmall Cub leaks all the time. I'm constantly turning the gas off at the sediment bowl so that I don't have a puddle of gas on the floor. If your carburetor leaks, if it floods easily and your tractor starts hard, then it might be time to rebuild the carburetor. So follow along while I rebuild mine. I'll show you every step along the process, and at the end, you'll have the confidence to rebuild your own carburetor on your Cub tractor. In my hands is an IH carburetor for a Cub. If yours looks a little different, you probably have a Zenith carburetor. Cubs that especially are newer than mine often have a Zenith carburetor on them. However, if you have an IH carburetor and it looks just like mine, I'm going to show you every single step in the process of a carburetor rebuild. Now first I'm going to do some disassembly. I will take both of these screws out of my throttle shaft here, pull the butterfly out, and then the shaft will pull out the side. Follow that same step down here for the choke. I will pull out my adjustment for my idle here. I will also take out my plug on the bottom, and this is where my main jet is. All those pieces are going to come apart, and then once I take these 4 screws out, my 2 halves will pull apart. When I do, I'll pull that apart gently. Inside we'll see the float, needle, and seat, and we'll take all of that apart too. When I pulled the 2 halves of my carburetor apart, I ran into a problem that's actually very common on a Cub carburetor, so I want to talk you through it in case you encounter the same issue. My idle tube was broken off. When I could just flip this out and my idle tube would come right out. However, the end of the threads of my tube stayed in the body of my carburetor. Therefore, when I put my new idle tube in, it won't screw in and it sticks out across the top, preventing the 2 halves of the carburetor from coming together. So if that's the problem that you have as well, this is what you need to do to fix it. First, you need to get those old threads out, and you can accomplish that by using a number 43 drill bit through the body or the bowl of your carburetor here. So you push that all the way through. Then you need to put new threads in, so you can use a number 4x40 tap like I have on the end of my drill here. And then you just slide this tap right through in order to put new threads into the base of your carburetor. This is extremely fragile, so work very carefully when you do these steps. Then once you have those new threads in there, you can put your tube through. I took a hacksaw to make a slot across the top, therefore I can put my screwdriver on and thread my new idle tube all the way through the carburetor. At the end, I will put some JB Weld on the bottom to seal that up, and then my carburetor will be ready to go with that new idle tube replaced. If your idle tube is in good condition, do not go through all of this hassle. Instead, just use a wire to clean through your idle tube and then spray it with some carb cleaner and make sure that it's clean. You only need to do these steps if your tube is broken like mine is. It's risky. You don't want to do any damage to the housing of your carburetor. So if you don't have to do this step, then don't do it. Only follow these steps if you absolutely need to and your idle tube is broken like mine was. Your carburetor has some packing by both your choke and your throttle shaft. I'm going to take it out here on my throttle shaft. You can see it'll just pry out with a little screwdriver, maybe a pick if you need to. And then you put the packing in next. Slide that in there. And this will just go right on top. I'm just going to tap it down with the ball peen hammer like this until it's flush. and I'll follow those same steps on both sides of my choke shaft. The overflow plug at the bottom of your carburetor will pull out the same way. You can just pry it out like so. There's a screen and then there's a felt packing. Let me try to punch it out this way and see if, yeah, both pieces there come out. New pieces come in your kit, you just put them in the same order. Before doing so, you should thoroughly clean your carburetor. Use a can of carb cleaner like this that has the straw on the end so that you can spray cleaner through every single passageway and make sure that it's thoroughly clean. That's going to be the ticket to your success. Spray your carburetor, follow with a blow-off nozzle, spray it a second time, and follow with a blow-off nozzle a second time so that you are sure that your carburetor is thoroughly clean. When you're using that chemical, make sure that you have safety glasses on so it doesn't spray back up into your face, and gloves are a good idea too, as it can be hard on your skin. When you have your carburetor thoroughly clean, I already cleaned mine, you're ready to put new pieces back in. So you're packing in the bottom here, there's this thick felt packing followed by this screen and then the final plug. The final plug you can just insert with a ball peen hammer until it's flush. On this side of the bowl here, we have both the main jet, which does have that little gasket on the end. You can notice that I included that, and then you use a 3/8" wrench to tighten that up, like so. Then you have your main drain plug here, and you can get that started and then tighten it up the rest of the way. That's going to be good on the bottom of your bowl here, with the exception of the choke shaft, which we'll come back to. Oh, you also need your emulsion tube. Here's your emulsion tube with the little gasket on the end that just drops down in there. You tighten it up with a deep well socket like this one. Just make sure that you don't overly tighten your emulsion tube. Tight, but not overly tight. On the top of your carburetor, you do have your throttle shaft here. You want to make sure that your throttle shaft slides in, and then when it's in, it moves freely. For some reason, there might be a little bit of a burr onto your shaft, and if there is, just clean it up with a Scotch-Brite pad. Don't use anything too abrasive, like really rough sandpaper, because you still want this to be snug, but if it's too snug, you can make a little adjustment. And then notice how I have the orientation of my throttle shaft. You want yours to be orientated the same way. Once you have that set in there, you can set your butterfly on top. There are numbers on the top of your butterfly, and the numbers always face up, and it only drops in here one way. Oh, I got mine crooked. Let me take that back out and try again here. I'm gonna set this on top of here, and then I like to use a self-starting screwdriver to get my screws started. I have my holes lined up. I'll get this one started, start the second one, and then I'll tighten them both up, and my throttle shaft will be all set. For your choke, the first thing you'll want to replace is this little choke door lock. You can just pull the old one out with a pair of pliers. Should come out fairly easily like that. And then your new one will insert in the same fashion. I'm going to slide that in there, and then just pinch it ever so slightly with the pliers so that it will go in. That little lip has got to get inside the hole there, just like that. Once that's in, you're ready to put your shaft in. The shaft is directional, and it's also narrow on this side and wider on the side where my hand is, so you'll want to make sure that you get your packings correct for the side. This does need to be in correct orientation, like I have mine. And then over on this side, you'll reuse this piece. I like to have the screw facing this way. I'm just gonna set that on there far enough that it can be secure but not block movement. Test it out and make sure that that's good. I'm gonna drive that in a little bit more. And then I'll tighten up that screw. Once I have that tight, I'll be ready to put my butterfly in. This butterfly is directional, and it slides in just like this. I'm gonna drop it down onto the shaft. Make sure those holes are lined up. And then I'll use a self-starting screwdriver to start both of those screws. Needle and seat is the next thing to put in the lid of your carburetor. I have a gasket underneath my seat, and you'll want to make sure that you put your gasket in there as well. I'm going to start this with my fingers and screw it down as far as I can that way, because my scraper is a little big for this carburetor, but you can use a scraper like this one to help you get across the threads to get it tightened up. Next, we have a needle which just drops down in there like that, and then your new float will be across the top here. The pin will slide through, You can replace your float if your old one is corroded, if it's dented, if you shake it and there's sediment inside. Those would all be reasons to replace your float. If your float seems to be in good repair, you could reuse it. Next, we'll want to make sure that it's set where it should be. This should be 1 inch and 15/16, which you can see my float is good as it is. Next, you want to flip that over and make sure that you can see the needle drop down. You don't want your needle to be stuck into the seat for any reason. That looks good to me, so we're happy with that. Next, I'll move up here and I need to put my little idle adjustment screw into the carburetor here, so you can just get this started. We have the spring on the end. Oops, it's a little tight, there we go. Okay, now as I'm screwing this in, I'm watching my butterfly, and I'll stop screwing as soon as I see that butterfly move. Let me get my screwdriver on here, and then I'm screwing it in just until I see an adjustment on the butterfly. Go a little bit more. There we go. I see my butterfly move. Oops. I see a little bit of a gap there. You want to screw in that far as well, and that's a good spot for your idle adjustment there. My next step is to put my gasket on, and then I'll drop the bowl of the carburetor over top just to make sure that I don't damage the sensitive float there. When I have it together, I'll flip it over. I like to get each screw started a little bit and then go back and tighten them all up. My idle mixture screw and spring are ready to go into the carburetor. I'm going to screw this down all the way, and then I'll back it out 1.5 turns. That's going to be a good spot for the idle to start. Then we can make a fine adjustment once the tractor's running. You can see that up on the top here I have the surface from the old gasket completely cleaned off, and you'll want to do the same. Also make sure that your manifold is cleaned up from the old gasket. New gasket in place, so now we're ready to put it onto the tractor. When you're ready to rebuild your own carburetor, you're going to need a carburetor kit. Now we offer 5 different levels of carburetor kits depending on how much detail you want to do on your carburetor, so let me run through them real quick so you can make an informed decision. The first kit that I have displayed here is what we call gaskets only. Add this kit to your car if you are new to carburetor rebuilding and suspect that once you do your job you might need to take it apart and take a second peek. You may damage your gasket if you take your carburetor apart a second time. So you could add a gasket kit to your cart with your regular kit, and then if you need it, you have it and you're not waiting on a second shipment. This displayed here is our economy kit. This is new gaskets, needle and seat. If your carburetor is not in bad shape and just needs a cleaning, this would be a good option for you. The next jump up is our basic kit, which has all the pieces in the economy, but it adds a new throttle shaft, which is a nice addition to the carburetor since the throttle shafts do wear out easily. The next jump up is what we call a complete kit. Here you can see you get both a choke and throttle shaft, as well as a new emulsion tube, your main jet here for the bottom, needle and seat, lots of nice pieces here. This is a really good kit, and you would be happy with the performance of your carburetor if you use a complete kit. However, if you really want to go all out on your carburetor, you'll choose this comprehensive kit. This is a kit that I'm going to use in the video today, so I'll show you where all of these pieces go. The upgrades on this kit are new screws for the perimeter of your carburetor, all the pieces that are required for the overflow drain in the bottom of your carburetor, a new main drain plug. Also, you get the new butterflies or doors for both your choke and your throttle. This is a super nice kit and definitely would be a nice upgrade for your carburetor if you went with the comprehensive route. Also, we offer my book. It's Farmall Cub Encyclopedia. This outlines many repairs that you will want to do for the maintenance of your carburetor. It does, your Cub tractor. It does cover the carburetor, the steps that I've shown here, as well as many others. It talks about a tune-up if you need to service your distributor and magneto, replace the front seal, air pressure in your tires, new valve adjustment, lots of different repairs, and you can see that there's a picture for every step in the process. So this is a very easy to follow method for maintenance type repairs that you'll want to do on your Cub. In addition to that, there's a decal guide and paint guide if you're going to restore your tractor, information about all the implements that were offered for the Cub, a buyer's guide, lots of history and technical information about all of the Cub models that were available throughout the years. Foreign Cubs are covered. This is just an excellent resource. If you are into Farmall tractors, then this would be a book you definitely want to add to your shelf and read and take in all of that information that Kenneth Updike and I have prepared for you. Another option for your repair would be a new rubber hose here. Mine was completely dry rotted on my tractor, and if yours is really brittle, you'll want to replace it as well. Lastly, the float is always offered separately from the kit. You don't always need to replace the float, but if yours is damaged, you'll definitely want to replace it, and it's sold separately from the kit. So if you need it, make sure that you add it to your cart separately. All of these kits are available on my website. It's farmtractorrepair.com. Our goal here is to help you know exactly how you can make these repairs to your tractors, and the way that we fund these tutorials is through the part sales. So your purchase on my site helps to fund future tractor tutorials. I know that you can buy Cub carb kits many places, but I ask that you put the sale in on my site to help to fund future tractor tutorials. My Cub is running well with the carburetor on. I hope that yours will run well too. If you need to make any adjustments to the idle on your Cub, you can do so right now. The first adjustment you can make would be with this screw right here. This takes the flutter out of the idle. And then the second adjustment is the screw on the back side on the actual throttle shaft. That will adjust the speed of the idle. Now hopefully the adjustments that you made when you're on the bench were appropriate and will run well on your tractor. However, if you need to make an adjustment, just turn those screws a quarter turn at a time. A little bit will make a big difference in the way that your tractor idles. I hope that these steps are helpful to you and it gives you the confidence to rebuild your own Cub carburetor. When you're ready to do so, you can purchase the parts on my website. It's farmtractorrepair.com. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel if you would like a notification whenever we release a new video.